of them. Mealtimes for us, it became a buffet event where we would just...
Time.
We were just, one of us would cook dinner. It would be out in the kitchen. Everybody would grab their food, and then we'd be off doing different things. And not only was that bad for our marriage, but it was bad for our family, because, not only are meal times good for you to sit down and talk to each other, but it's also a good time for you to sit down and talk with your kids. And when you're talking to each other, you're also modeling good relationship behavior to your kids. So that's a huge thing is meal times. And dinner doesn't always work for families. There are certain people that have different schedules where dinner doesn't work. If you can't do dinner, do breakfast or do lunch. Find at least one meal a day that you can do together as a family and as a couple. Comradeship is the third com, and it comes from the Latin for being together in the same place. So friendships are built on shared experiences that lead to shared memories. So when we were first married, we had a list of things to do together. We would always do things. In fact, we used to have lunch together. We would go out to lunch 2 or 3 times a week. And we couldn't always afford to do that once we started having kids. But what we did was we cut out that time that we would spend having lunch together, and we did not replace the time. So even though we couldn't afford to go out to lunch 3 days a week, we never replaced that time together. And we should have we should have done that. We should have replaced that time.
Filled that void there.
So now we have to just be really creative about the time that we spend together. I happen to be really fortunate that Todd gets off at 1:30 in the afternoon, and it's because he goes in at ungodly hours of the morning, but he gets off at 1:30, and we do have a couple of hours before the kids get home to really just sit down, focus on each other, talk to each other. And we just have a really, it's kind of the replacement for the going out every 3 days a week.
We make that time together.
For the marriage course time, or the marriage time during the marriage course, there's homework that we hope will stimulate further conversation. But it's important not to always be analyzing your relationship or becoming over intense. It's about, you really have to have fun together, because if you're really thinking about all the mechanics, you're missing out on all the fun stuff. So. Okay, so the fifth love language is acts of kindness or acts of service. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting is it really kind of ranked low for me until the last time that I did this. But acts of kindness are really it was actually my primary language that I showed. I was always doing something for Todd, baking cakes or cookies.
Not just for me, but for other people too.
For other people too. Yeah. And that was just my way of showing appreciation or love or respect or whatever it was. And I couldn't figure out, why am I scoring so low on this? And I still don't know, but I do know now when I do the love language test, it does rank right even. I'm bilingual. I'm acts of service and quality time. So acts of service, this is an expressing love through servicing someone, through seeking to meet their needs and their desires in practical ways. So it could be making them a cup of coffee, or cleaning the house, or the car, or cleaning the car.
Ooh,
or someone who's willing to take over the finances.
Like the vacuuming.
I do like the vacuuming. There's nothing sexier than watching a man vacuum.
We own about 6 vacuums, guys. All the rooms are covered.
No, we don't. We own 3. And we only have 2 rooms with carpet.
That's a good thing.
Or it could be cooking, a favorite baked good. So even though acts of kindness or acts of service does not rank high, it didn't used to rank high for me. It ranks high for, it does now. We do both like to do things for each other. And that's the thing. Even if it doesn't rank high, it doesn't mean that you don't speak it. It just means that you don't do it as often. So one thing can be a deadly attitude in marriage is to think it must be fair. So I did that for you, so now you should do this for me. Really avoid that. We used to do that a lot, and that's a marriage killer.
That was a killer for us. I don't think I'm on. You guys hear me all right?
Especially when it comes to gift giving, like, well, he got that, so I'm going to get this. And pretty soon you're putting yourselves into bankruptcy because you've spent so much money.
Right.
But you can do that in emotional bankruptcy. You can say, he should do this for me because I did that for him. And pretty soon you've just drained each other's bank accounts so bad that you're in bankruptcy.
Right. Or, I used to think, well, I went window shopping with Candace for 3 hours and I vacuumed the floor. Therefore, tonight's going to be fireworks. Well, that didn't happen that way, and I was disappointed. So it's exactly what Candace said. You just, there's the give and take part.
Right. And it doesn't always have to be in close proximity to each other. So when life is hectic, its instinctive question we ask is, why isn't he or she helping me? Here's a really big one. I before would spend a lot of time thinking, why isn't he helping me? Doesn't he see the sock on the floor? Doesn't he see that the vacuuming needs to be done? Doesn't he see that the trash needs to be taken out? And the truth of the matter is, he may or may not see it.
No, I'm kidding.
Honestly, he may or may not see it. It just doesn't matter to him the same way it matters to me. And it took me a lot to get over that hump to say, if he does see it, it probably doesn't matter as much to him. So if I need something from him, here's a concept. Honey, would you mind please taking out the trash?
Oh,
Honey, would you please vacuum the floor? Honey, will you please help me fold the laundry? Instead of storming around the house, getting all upset because he doesn't just know.
And that comes under that part where I said, the assuming part, where you assume your partner or spouse knows your love language.
Right. If you go into any situation assuming that the other person has the best intentions, your attitude is going to be so much better on the other end. If I assume that my car isn't clean or the floor is not vacuumed because Todd just didn't have time or it wasn't important to him or whatever the situation, instead of assuming that he knew it was there, he knew I wanted it done, and he just flat out didn't want to do it, I'm going to have a lot better attitude in the end if I'm just assuming that he has the best intentions from the beginning. So, just to recap, we went over 5 ways of showing love or respect, and those things are words of affirmation, gifts or presents, physical touch, quality time, and acts of service.
All right.
That about covers them.
Yeah, it does. So we're gonna spend about 5 minutes, guys, and we're gonna discover your partner's very own love languages. You guys are gonna talk to each other a little bit about it. One thing I want to point out is you must accept that your husband or wife may have a different love language than ourselves, and it's not good trying to change your husband or wife. Don't try to change them, because if you want your husband or wife to be more physical touch, you can't just try to change them, because it'll lead to bigger problems. Do this exercise in the book for homework if you wish, but this handout will give you a better understanding. I don't have the handouts with us, guys. I was going to give you a handout that you guys can go down and do the love language, kind of like a little test thing to see which one you were, but I'm sorry, I apologize. I'll try to have that for you next week. However, we're going to spend the next 30 minutes discovering your partners and your very own love languages. I'm going to have dessert brought out to you. I believe in our book, that is on page, pull it up here, 97, I think. Yep. And the directions are there. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. If you have any questions, just raise your hand or get one of our attention. We'd gladly help you with it. And give you about 30 minutes. We'll have some dessert. And we'll get back and wrap this up.
Yeah, this is a fun exercise, you guys. This is really great.
All right.
Okay, I want to know out there whose spouse is words of affirmation. Show of hands.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
A few of you. Whose spouse is gifts?
Got any? Yeah.
Tia.
The gift, that's right.
Usually there's one in the crowd, at least. Whose spouse is physical touch? Whose spouse is physical touch?
Sorry.
Whose spouse is quality time? Quality time. Good.
Me, you.
Whose spouse? Whose spouse is acts of kindness? Acts of service.
Yeah, service, kindness.
Kindness. I'm trying to use both because there's Gary Chapman and then there's what's in your book. So cool. So it's pretty mixed throughout the group. So that's pretty good.
Yeah. So guys, it would be a mistake to think.
Oh, wait. Let me ask one thing.
Oh.
Is there any bilinguals out there?
Yeah.
Nice. Lots of bilinguals. Good.
Yeah.
A lot of well-balanced people out there.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, babe.
So some people think, that we got our marriage figured out and that's it. We got it figured out. We can move on. It's all figured out. And some people on their wedding day say, this is the best day of my life. It can't get any better. Well, marriage is not a static relationship. Marriage is designed to be a dynamic relationship that keeps changing. Remember the marriage wheel? And that's what we talked about in the first week, with the commitment as the outer rim.
Coming up every few weeks.
Yeah, and keep that, guys, as you go through your journey in your marriage. That thing right there, God in the middle. You got to have that. You don't have that, the whole wheel just falls apart. The topics we've covered so far in the marriage course are the tools we use to maintain our marriage and keep it moving forwards. Having marriage time, talking about our feelings and listening to each other, tackling problems together, telling each other when we've been hurt, and forgiving each other, using each other's love languages. Marriage is a journey that takes us through different places, over different terrain, through different seasons. There will be other people who join us for this parts of the journey. When our marriage is working well, many others will benefit from it and enjoy traveling with us. For example, our friends. While we need to guard our privacy and keep times to ourselves and have alone time with each other, we are not to cut ourselves off from our friends. We have single friends who have brought much enjoyment to us as a family and who've also enjoyed being with us in our home. Children. Many marriages have children who join us for a large part of the journey, but not for all of it. Parts of the journey will be very challenging. We could probably agree with that.
Yeah, we can attest to that.
Yeah. Marriage is challenging, guys. We all know that. Even us as teachers, it's challenging. It's just because we come here and we tell our story doesn't mean that we've got it figured out. We still have our ups and downs. It's normal. That's what's going to happen. The difference being, though, is that we now have the tools to right the wrong, basically.
We definitely, I'm sorry, we were actually just having this conversation on the way over here, talking about a situation that came up this week. And the situation was that Todd was really having a bad day. He didn't really want to talk about it. And I kind of kept probing. And we finally just, when we had some time to settle down and there were no other distractions, he really just expressed to me everything that was going on. And, we were recognizing that when we were married before, what would happen is I would just get irritated with him for not telling me what was wrong, and I would assume that it was something I had done, and then I would be mad at him for not telling me, and then I would storm off and ignore him and stop talking to him, and then he would be irritated thinking, now what's her problem? I was having a bad day at work, and now all of a sudden my wife is mad at me. Right. So, this is the cycle that we would go through, and this happens a lot in marriage. It really does. And so
it's common. It's very common.
The thing that we were recognizing is that, Todd didn't really come out and tell me what was going on, but he recognized that, he really needed to be able to communicate with me. So we don't always get it right the first time. And that's the good part, is that we do now at least recognize that, we failed, and now we kind of need to pick ourselves up and do this again. And one thing that we really like about this course is it really keeps us on track, because we're always having to go back and, we need to do this. Oh yeah, we need to do this. So this is a really great opportunity for Todd and I to really stay on track with each other.
Absolutely. And I'll refer to this like I do every year, every time we talk about this, is that it's a toolbox. You got your toolbox with all these tools in it that you've taken from this course. And you can always refer back to it. I'm having trouble communicating. Man, she's not getting it. If I need help with it, and I still do sometimes, I can refer back to the art of communication in this course and look back through some of the fine points that really help communicating. It's a toolbox, guys. Use it and you'll benefit. You'll definitely benefit. When we are both committed, there's nothing we come up against that we cannot work through together. Then every difficulty becomes an opportunity for growing together because we're committed to travel this journey side by side. Definitely committed.
Yeah. Yes, we are. Marriage is not easy, but it can be richly rewarding. I mean, it's just like parenting. Parenting can be really hard sometimes, but when your kids give you that hug, it makes it all worth it. And it's the same thing with marriage. Marriage is supposed to be work. It's supposed to be hard because it's worth it. So we just want to say congratulations for everything that you guys have achieved so far. So everyone in here is married, some longer than others. But congratulations for just being here and wanting to make your marriage work. Building a marriage is a significant achievement, and in years to come, we believe we will all look back on it as the most significant achievement of all. And I would have to say next to our relationship with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Marriage takes a commitment and courage, but we believe that God has called you and all of us to a partnership. Your marriage and our marriage is no accident. I mean, we're always on God's time, and we have to remember that. I'm going to close before our final prayer on a story from a German pastor who was imprisoned during the last war for his opposition to the Third Reich and tragically put to death just before the end of the war. The respect of his guards that they smuggled letters and papers he had written out of prison. So I'm going to read this. While he was in prison, his niece was married and had been free. He would have taken her... Had he been free, he would have taken her wedding. However, he wrote a sermon that was smuggled out on the eve of her wedding and read at the service. This is part of that sermon. You have just said to one another, I will. And with those words, you have declared your voluntary assent and turned a critical point in your lives. You know full well all the doubts and suspicions with which a lifelong partnership between two persons is faced. But you have defied those doubts and suspicions with a cheerful confidence, and by your free assent, you have conquered a new land to live in. Later on, he continues, God is guiding your marriage. Marriage is more than your love for each other. It is a higher dignity and power, for it is God's holy ordinance through which he wills to perpetrate through the human race until the end of time. In your love, you see only two selves in the world, but in your marriage, you are a link in the chain of generations, which God causes to come and to pass away his glory and calls into his kingdom. In your love, you see only the heaven in your happiness, but in your marriage, you are placed on a post of responsibility toward the world and mankind. Your love is your own private possession, but marriage is more than something personal. It is a status and office. So next week, again, I want to remind you, I know it's getting close to Christmas and it's so tempting. I don't really want to come, but there's going to be a small teaching message. It's going to be a really great